trash like you doesn't belong behind a rig like this. You stole it and you're busted. Deputy Vance slammed Jada Reeves against the front grille of her own truck, twisting her arm hard enough to bruise as the dash cam vibrated above them. "Charity shipment," he sneered, eyeing the sealed trailer like it was already evidence. His partner stepped in close, cuffs snapping open beside her ear. "Probably stuffed with something dirty." Gravel ground beneath her boots as his grip tightened, meant to intimidate, meant to degrade. Vance leaned in, breath hot with certainty. He thought he was breaking a trucker. He had no idea he had just laid hands on a former Delta Force commander, trained to end threats exactly like him. The sun cast long shadows across Route 23 as Jada Reeves guided her 18-wheeler through Pine Hollow County. Her eyes scanned the road ahead, taking in the empty stretches between the sparse trees that gave the county its name. The sealed trailer behind her carried medical supplies, bound for a veterans charity 2 states over. The dashcam's tiny red light blinked steadily on her windshield, a quiet guardian recording every mile. Jada kept her speed exactly at the limit, hands at 10 and 2, maintaining the discipline that had become second nature long before she started driving trucks. Blue and red lights exploded in her side mirror. Jada checked her speedometer again, though she already knew what it would show. The patrol car's lights strobed closer, and she eased her rig onto the gravel shoulder, positioning it carefully to keep the dash cam's view clear. 2 deputies emerged from the patrol car. The taller one swaggered toward her cab, hand resting casually on his belt. His partner circled wide, boots crunching on gravel, as he positioned himself on her blind side. "Out of the truck!" the tall deputy barked before she could reach for her license. "Hands where we can see them." Jada's fingers tightened slightly on the wheel. "Deputy Vance," she read from his nameplate, keeping her voice steady. "I have my documentation right here." "I set out." Vance's face twisted. "Unless you want to explain where you stole this rig from." "Stolen?" Jada kept her tone neutral, even as her mind cataloged details. No initial request for a license, no statement of cause for the stop, no radio call-in of their location. "You heard him," the second deputy, Pike, cut in. "Out now! Wrong county to be playing games." It wasn't even close to dark yet. Jada noted that too as she complied, movements deliberate and smooth. The gravel crunched under her boots as she stepped down. Vance grabbed her arm immediately, shoving her toward the side of the trailer. Hands on the metal, spread them. Jada planted her feet, absorbing the push while scanning the empty road. No witnesses, no buildings, no cell signal bars on her phone. This stretch of highway felt owned, claimed territory rather than public road. "Running awful nice equipment for a long haul," Pike said, circling closer. His hand kept drifting to his holster like he was hoping for an excuse. "Bet there's quite a story there." "The story's in my paperwork," Jada replied. "Everything's in order." "We'll be the judge of that," Vance said. He started an exaggerated pat-down, hands lingering too long, movements designed to provoke and humiliate. "Awful mouthy for someone in your position." Jada focused on her breathing as Pike blocked her view of the patrol car. The positioning wasn't random. They had done this before. One to search, one to obstruct, working together to control what could be seen from the road. "Papers don't match," Vance announced, though he hadn't even looked at them. "Going to need to check that trailer." "It's sealed," Jada said. "Charity shipment, medical supplies." "That what you're calling it?" Pike's laugh had an ugly edge. "Could be anything in there?" Could be you're running something else entirely. Jada watched Vance circle the trailer, paying special attention to the seal. His eyes had the hungry look of someone who had already decided what he was going to find. This wasn't a traffic stop, it was a hunting pattern. Fish for an excuse, plant evidence if needed, split the proceeds later. Awful lot of freight traffic through our county lately, Vance said, pulling something from his back pocket. The metal gleamed. Seal cutters. Awful lot of problems, too. But we keep things clean here, right, Pike? Yes, sir, we do. Pike shifted his stance, thumb tapping his radio without keying it. No call-ins, no record, no witnesses. The sun stretched their shadows across the gravel. Jada's calm finally crystallized into something harder as Vance approached the seal, cutters raised, and a smirk playing across his face. She had read this situation like terrain from the first moment. The angles, the isolation, the practiced movements of predators who thought their badges made them untouchable. They had no idea they had just cornered someone who had spent years teaching others how to dismantle the untouchable. Metal screeched against metal as Vance worked the cutters against the trailer's seal. Pike's fingers dug into Jada's arm, trying to force her still. The deputy's grip was tight enough to bruise, but his stance was sloppy. All show, no substance. You're going to regret making this difficult, Pike hissed in her ear. His other hand rested on his holster, thumb flicking the retention strap. Should have just played nice. Jada took a slow breath. Measuring distances, the cab door hung open at just the right angle. Pike's weight was too far forward. Vance had turned his back completely, focused on breaking the seal. Amateur mistakes. She moved in one fluid motion. She dropped her shoulder, twisted her wrist through the gap in Pike's grip, and used his own forward momentum to pivot him straight into the doorframe. His head snapped back with a hollow thunk. Before he could recover, she had his arm locked behind him, leveraging his weight against the truck's cab. What the? Vance spun at the sound, dropping the cutters. His hand went for his weapon. Jada was faster. She kicked Pike's legs out, dropping him face first into the gravel, and rolled sideways as Vance charged. His wild grab met empty air. She caught his extended arm, redirected his momentum, and drove him down beside his partner. The move was pure physics. No punches thrown, just precise application of force and leverage. Don't move, she said quietly, one knee pressed into Vance's back. Her hand slipped into her boot, retrieving a hidden handcuff key she had carried since her commanding days. Old habits died hard. You're out of your mind, Vance's curse cut off in a grunt as she secured his wrists with his own cuffs. Assaulting officers, Pike wheezed, still kissing gravel. You're done. You're so done. So Jada secured him just as efficiently, then reached through her cab window and triggered her dash cam's secondary audio recording. Let's talk about why you really stopped me. You attacked us. Vance twisted against the cuffs. That's assault. No cameras running, no radio calls, no probable cause, Jada listed calmly, almost like you were told to keep this quiet. Pike's face went still. Vance's neck flushed red. We were told you'd be alone out here, Pike spat, then immediately clamped his mouth shut, realizing his mistake. Told by whom? Jada pressed. You don't get to leave with that load, Vance growled. Not from our county, not with what's riding on it. Jada allowed herself a small smile. Both confessions captured cleanly on audio. She pulled their keys from their belts and walked to their patrol car, popping the trunk. The evidence of their real operation lay organized in neat rows: small plastic baggies, spare latex gloves, an extra badge without a number. And there, paper clipped to a folder, a crisp photo of her stepping down from her cab at the way station. The timestamp showed the previous afternoon. They had been hunting her specifically. The question was why. Jada pulled out her phone and dialed emergency services. The line clicked, connected, then went dead with a sharp click. She tried again. This time a female voice answered, sweet as artificial sugar. Pine Hollow Emergency Services. I need to report 2 deputies conducting an illegal stop. I have them restrained after they attempted to— Ma'am, the dispatcher cut in, voice dripping concern. Please stay exactly where you are. Help is coming right away. No request for details, no standard questions, just syrupy reassurance and a clear instruction to stay put. Jada's neck prickled. What units are responding? She asked. Help is coming, ma'am. Please remain stationary. No sirens wailed in the distance. No radio chatter crackled from the patrol car. Just that sugary voice telling her to stay still like a spider, encouraging a fly to wait in its web. The deputies had stopped struggling. Instead, they watched her with small, knowing smiles. A low rumble grew in the distance. Jada turned toward the sound as multiple sets of headlights crested the hill ahead. The vehicles moved fast, running dark. No light bars, no sirens, just shadows flowing down the highway like oil, closing the distance with predatory purpose. Both deputies started laughing. The headlights grew larger, eating up the dark road. Jada moved fast, grabbing both deputies by their collar backs and dragging them behind her trailer's bulk. They struggled and cursed, but the cuffs held. Shut up, she ordered quietly, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made even Vance's mouth snap closed. Years of command experience didn't fade. She pulled their body cameras off first, fingers working with practiced efficiency. The small devices contained everything she needed: their approach, their threats, their slip-ups admitting they had targeted her. Working quickly, she connected each camera to her encrypted phone, copying the files. You really think that'll help? Pike sneered, but his voice shook slightly. Nobody's going to believe you over us. Jada didn't respond, focused on uploading the footage to her dead man drop, a secure server that would release everything if she didn't check in regularly. Insurance against disappearing. The approaching vehicles were close now, their engines a low growl in the gathering dusk. She grabbed both deputies' radios, switching them to transmit mode and wedging them carefully under her trailer. Open mics, catching everything said in the next few minutes. Static crackled, then voices cut through. Got eyes on the truck. Seal intact. Clean this up fast. Sheriff wants no traces. Sheriff Hollis Van. The name clicked into place like a round being chambered. She had maybe moments before they reached her position. You're dead, Vance spat. You hear me? Dead and buried where nobody asks questions. Like the other drivers? Jada asked softly, watching understanding flash across his face. She had hit something there. Other victims, other stops, other cover-ups. The approaching vehicles were close enough that she could count them. 4 SUVs, running dark, spreading out to box in her position. Standard tactical containment. They had done this before. She had 2 choices: stay and try to fight a rigged system, or make a tactical withdrawal and choose better ground. The decision took less than a second. Jada slipped into her cab, engine already running. The deputies were still secure but alive. She wasn't giving them a martyr story. The open mics would catch whatever happened next. She had marked the GPS coordinates in 3 different devices. Her rig rolled forward, gathering speed. In her mirrors, she watched the SUVs suddenly accelerate, trying to cut her off. But she had momentum and 18 wheels to their 4. They couldn't risk ramming her without exposing themselves. She drove steadily, not too fast, not too slow. Just another truck on a dark road. The SUVs fell back, keeping their distance but maintaining visual contact, looking for her next stop. Later, she pulled into the pilot travel center, its floodlights creating a pool of harsh fluorescence. Other trucks lined the lot. Witnesses, cameras, safety, and numbers. She backed into a spot with practiced ease, just another driver ending her day. But first, she needed to check her rig. That photo from the way station meant they had had time to prep. Sure enough, when she examined her cab in detail, she found scratch marks around the latch. Someone had tried to plant something while she had been inside paying for fuel earlier. Sloppy work rushed by her earlier departure. Jada pulled out a burner phone, one of several she kept for emergencies. She dialed a number from memory, one given to her by another veteran who had sworn by its reliability. "Preach's Auto," a deep voice answered. "We're closed." "I'm calling about the veterans discount," Jada said, quietly, using the code phrase from her network. A pause. "Who vouched?" "Marcus Turner, 3rd Group." Another pause. "Hold on." Muffled movement, a door closing. When the voice returned, it was lower, more cautious. "I'm Preach. What's your situation?" Jada gave him the bullet points. The stop, the deputies, the approaching SUVs, Sheriff Van's name. "Jesus," Preach breathed. "You need to leave. This county eats outsiders, especially ones who fight back." "I've got evidence," Jada said, "and a sealed trailer they wanted badly enough to risk exposure." "Evidence doesn't matter here," Preach warned. "Sheriff Van's got judges in his pocket, deputies on his leash, and enough friends to make problems vanish." Jada watched the sun setting through her windshield, painting the sky in deep purples and bloody reds. Running meant leaving others vulnerable, meant letting predators keep their badges, meant looking away. She started her engine. "I'm going to need directions," she said, "to the county courthouse." "You're making a mistake," Preach said heavily. "They own the dark here." "Then I'll make them face me in the light." Jada pulled out, turning her rig toward town. Sometimes survival meant hiding, but sometimes it meant standing your ground where everyone could see. The sun streamed through the courthouse's tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Jada stood at the clerk's counter, her complaint form and thumb drive placed deliberately in front of her. The elderly clerk's smile didn't reach her eyes as she peered over reading glasses. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we don't take complaints like that without an appointment." The clerk's voice dripped with fake sweetness. "It's policy. Show me where that policy is written," Jada said quietly, her tone level and professional. The clerk's smile tightened. "Perhaps you'd like to speak with one of our officers." A desk sergeant appeared, his badge reading Matthews. He squared his shoulders, trying to make his presence intimidating. "What seems to be the problem here?" "I need to file a complaint about Deputies Vance and Pike regarding an illegal stop and attempted theft," Jada stated clearly. Matthews made a show of shuffling through papers. "Can't seem to find those forms right now. System's been acting up lately," he smirked. "Maybe try the county seat miles over." Behind the counter, a younger clerk whispered something to her colleague, both giggling. A phone camera flashed briefly. Someone taking her picture. Jada kept her face neutral, but her mind recorded everything. the clerk who texted immediately after the photo, the security guard by the metal detector who suddenly found his radio interesting, the maintenance man who hustled away like he didn't want to be seen. "We get all kinds through here," an officer lounging against the wall announced loudly. "Especially certain kinds of drivers who don't know their place on our roads." More laughter rippled through the lobby. Jada didn't react to the bait. She had commanded missions where a single wrong move meant death. These small-town power plays were amateur hour. "I'd like to speak with Judge Whitaker." The laughter stopped. The clerk's expression froze. "Judge Whitaker is unavailable," Matthews said flatly. "I'll wait," Jada replied. "Could be a very long wait." Matthews leaned forward. "Might want to get back on the road, safer that way." A woman in her early 30s with a messenger bag approached the counter, pretending to check a bulletin board. She had quick, observant eyes and a press pass partially hidden under her jacket. "Excuse me," the woman said quietly when Matthews stepped away. "Are you Jada Reeves?" Jada turned slightly, evaluating the stranger. "Who's asking?" "Lena Hart. I run an investigative podcast." She kept her voice low. "I've been looking into stories about this county for months. Your name came up on a rumor board. Something about a sealed federal case a few years back." "Not interested in publicity," Jada said firmly. "I get it. But before you walk away," Lena pulled out her phone, showed a spreadsheet. "These are missing drivers, mostly black and brown. All disappeared along this same corridor over the past years. Local cops claim they have no records. But the pattern speaks for itself." Jada finished studying the names and dates. "I can help," Lena pressed. "My audience knows how to amplify stories that need telling, make them too public to bury." Jada was about to refuse again when movement at the main entrance drew everyone's attention. Sheriff Hollis Van swept in like a politician working a room. His uniform was crisp, his smile practiced and warm. He moved through the lobby, shaking hands, calling people by name, radiating authority wrapped in folksy charm. "Sarah, how's that grandbaby doing?" he asked the clerk. "Matthews, good work on that highway patrol coordination." Each interaction was perfectly calculated, reminding everyone who controlled their comfort, their careers, their security. Then Van turned, and his eyes met Jada's. There was no surprise in his face, no confusion, just calm recognition, as if he had been waiting for this moment. His smile never wavered. "Welcome to Pine Hollow," he said, voice carrying across the now silent lobby. "I don't believe we've had the pleasure." He extended his hand. The gesture wasn't friendly. It was a challenge, a public move, forcing her to either accept his dominance or mark herself as hostile. Jada noted how everyone watched, how phones appeared ready to record, how the security guard's hand drifted toward his weapon. Jada kept her hands at her sides, neither accepting nor refusing, just standing her ground, face composed, eyes steady on his. She had faced down warlords and cartel bosses. This man was dangerous, but he wasn't unique. The moment stretched, heavy with tension. Van's smile remained fixed, but something cold flickered in his eyes. The look of a man unused to having his authority questioned, especially in his own courthouse. Around them, the lobby had gone completely still. Everyone watching the silent confrontation between the truck driver who wouldn't back down and the sheriff who expected absolute submission. The air felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. Sheriff Van followed her out of the courthouse, his footsteps unhurried on the concrete steps. The sun cast his shadow long across the sidewalk, stretching toward her like a reaching hand. "Miss Reeves," he called, voice gentle as a prayer. "A moment of your time." Jada turned, maintaining precise distance. Van's sheriff's badge caught the sunlight, a deliberate flash of authority. "I pride myself on knowing every professional driver who comes through Pine Hollow," he said, closing the gap with measured steps. "We're a close community, God-fearing people who look out for each other." He gestured toward a black SUV idling nearby. "Perhaps we could discuss your concerns somewhere more private." "I've filed my complaint," Jada replied evenly. Van's smile didn't waver. Complaints can be such formal things. Cold paperwork doesn't solve problems like a good conversation can. He lowered his voice to a confiding murmur. "Besides, I'd hate to see your rig held up by inspections. They happen so randomly these days. Department of Transportation's very thorough." From the corner of her eye, Jada spotted Lena Hart partially hidden behind a courthouse pillar. Phone raised discreetly. Smart woman. "Is that an offer or a threat, Sheriff?" "Now, why would you take it that way?" Van spread his hands. The picture of wounded innocence. "I'm trying to help. These roads can be dangerous for outsiders who don't understand local ways." "I understand plenty," Jada said. "Do you?" His eyes hardened slightly, though his smile remained fixed. "Because from where I stand, you seem like someone about to make things harder than they need to be." Jada met his gaze steadily. "Harder for whom?" Van chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You drive safe now," he said, turning away. "God bless." The walk back to the truck lot took minutes. Jada's rig sat exactly where she had left it. But something was off. A patrol car rolled past slowly, the deputy inside making a show of checking his phone. Near her trailer, fresh boot prints marked the gravel. When she got closer, she saw it. Someone had photographed her cargo seal, documenting it for whatever story they planned to tell later. Later, she pulled into Preach's auto shop. The old mechanic waited by the bay door, expression grim. He waved her around back out of street view. "They're watching," he said as she killed the engine. "Been driving past all morning." Inside the shop office, Preach poured coffee into styrofoam cups. His hands were grease-stained but steady. "County uses these roads like their personal ATM," he explained. "Traffic stops, civil asset forfeiture, mysterious fines that vanish if you know who to pay." He settled into a creaking chair. "But it's more than money. They target folks who don't fit their idea of who belongs here." "How long?" Jada asked. "Got worse when Van took office. Man talks Jesus, but practices something else entirely." Preach glanced out the grimy window. "You eaten today?" Jada shook her head. Preach pulled a sandwich from a small fridge, wrapped in wax paper. "Not much, but it's clean," he said. She had just taken her first bite when the siren started. Red and blue light strobed through the window glass, painting the walls in emergency colors. Car doors slammed. Heavy boots crunched on gravel. "Pine Hollow Sheriff's Department, anonymous tip about suspicious activity." Deputies swarmed the property, weapons drawn. They pushed past Preach's protests, spreading through the shop like a virus. Tools clattered to the floor. Drawers crashed open. Filing cabinets tipped with metallic shrieks. "Well, well," a deputy called out. "What do we have here?" Jada's truck, he crouched, pointing at small plastic bags, lying suspiciously clean against the tire well. They hadn't been there minutes ago. The staged discovery was almost insulting in its obviousness. Jada pulled latex gloves from her pocket. She had learned long ago to carry them and carefully photographed everything: the bags, their placement, the deputy's position, the angle of the lights, evidence against their evidence. A different deputy shouldered close, tobacco on his breath. "Way I see it," he growled, "you're leaving here in cuffs. Only question is whether you walk to the car or get dragged." The shop lights flickered once, twice, then darkness swept in as the power died, leaving only the swirling red and blue emergency lights to illuminate the scene. In that strobing darkness, every shadow looked like a threat, and every threat wore a badge. The emergency lights painted violent patterns across the darkened shop interior. Tools cast twisted shadows on the walls, transforming the familiar space into something sinister. Preach moved with deliberate slowness, positioning himself between Jada and the advancing deputies. "This is my property," he said, voice steady despite the tension. "You're overstepping." "Shut it, old man," one deputy snapped. "You're interfering with a lawful search." Through the shop's grimy windows, Jada spotted Lena Hart in her parked car. Phone held up like a shield, though her hands visibly shook. Smart woman keeping distance while documenting everything. The lead deputy grabbed Preach's arm, spinning him roughly against the wall. The sound of his body hitting metal echoed through the shop. "You want to obstruct justice? Fine. Here's your citation for interfering with law enforcement." The handcuffs clicked shut around Preach's wrists, unnecessarily tight. The old mechanic didn't resist, but his dignity in the face of their bullying made the scene even more brutal. Jada's muscles coiled with combat-trained responses, but she forced herself still. One swing, one push, one moment of justified resistance. That's all they needed. She could already see the headlines they'd write. Violent trucker assaults officers during routine inspection. Instead, she reached for a different weapon. Procedure. "Badge number 4479, she said clearly, reading it off the deputy's chest. "You're conducting a warrantless search without probable cause or consent. Please state your reasonable suspicion for the record." The deputy's swagger faltered slightly. He hadn't expected this calm recitation of policy. "And Officer Martinez, badge 5582, Jada continued, her voice carrying to where Lena's phone recorded. "You've just detained a property owner for requesting identification during an unannounced search. Department policy requires you to document your justification." She pulled out her own phone, keeping it visible. "I'd like both of you to repeat your probable cause for this inspection slowly and clearly, please." The deputies exchanged glances. Their script hadn't prepared them for someone who knew the rules better than they did. "You trying to play lawyer?" Martinez sneered, but his confidence had cracked. "No," Jada replied. "I'm ensuring proper documentation of an official law enforcement action. Would you like to contact your supervisor to confirm procedure?" The mention of supervision shifted the energy. The deputy's aggression deflated like a punctured tire, replaced by uncertainty. They had expected fear, resistance, maybe even violence, anything that would justify escalation. Instead, they faced something worse. Accountability. "We're done here," the lead deputy announced, trying to salvage authority. "But those bags stay where we found them, evidence in plain view." He unlocked Preach's handcuffs with deliberate roughness, shoving a citation into the mechanic's chest. The amount would be carefully calculated, enough to hurt, not enough to justify court costs fighting it. Preach rubbed his wrists as the deputies retreated, their boots crunching on scattered tools and debris. The power flickered back on, harsh, fluorescent light revealing the chaos they had left behind. Tools scattered everywhere, drawers hanging open, papers strewn across the floor. The planted bag sat accusingly near Jada's truck. A silent threat. "You okay?" Jada asked Preach. He nodded, straightening his shirt with dignity. "Nothing I haven't seen before. But you?" He looked at her with concern. "They're not done with you." "I know." Jada checked her watch. "I need to move the rig before sunrise." She spent the next hours practicing every counter-surveillance technique she had learned in her previous life. 3 careful turns down side streets, watching for taillights. 2 complete stops, letting any followers reveal themselves. 1 long loop through an industrial park, noting every vehicle that matched her path. They were following her, of course. Not obviously. They had learned from her exposing their roadside tactics, but she spotted the same unmarked sedan at 3 different intersections and a patrol car that kept appearing just within sight. The pre-dawn air was heavy with humidity when she pulled into a 24-hour diner's parking lot. Lena's compact car was already waiting, its driver hunched over a laptop surrounded by empty coffee cups. "I can help," Lena said as soon as Jada approached. "We blur faces, distort voices, protect sources, but people need to hear what happened on that road." Jada studied the younger woman's face, looking for any trace of glory-seeking or recklessness. She found only determined compassion. "The locals come first," Jada said firmly. "Nothing gets released if it puts them at risk. Preach, the diner staff, anyone who might face retaliation. They get protection or we don't move." "Agreed," Lena nodded. "I've got secure channels, ways to release information that can't be traced back, and numbers for good lawyers." "How soon?" "Give me hours to set up proper safeguards." Lena started gathering her equipment. "Meet back here tomorrow." "Different location," Jada corrected. "I'll text you." As they prepared to part ways, Jada's trained eye caught movement across the street. A county cruiser sat silent in the shadows of a closed gas station. Its engine cold, but its occupant alert, watching, waiting. The first rays of dawn hadn't yet touched the horizon when Jada parked her rig behind an abandoned warehouse. Lena's camera light cast an artificial glow across the trailer's rear doors as they documented every detail of the untampered seal. "Getting clear footage of the numbers," Lena whispered, zooming in. "Show me exactly how you're breaking it." Jada held up the seal cutters. "Notice the original closure is intact, no signs of previous tampering." She snipped through the metal cleanly. The sharp sound echoed off concrete walls. The heavy doors creaked open. Jada swept her flashlight across rows of neatly stacked medical supplies. Bandages, basic instruments, medication bottles in sealed containers. Everything matched the manifest perfectly. "This is all legitimate," Lena observed, panning her camera across the cargo. "Real charity shipment, which makes it perfect cover." Jada ran her hands along the trailer's inner wall, finding the subtle seam she had suspected existed. Her fingers caught a hidden latch, and a false panel popped loose. Tucked inside was a small encrypted drive, barely larger than a pack of gum. The label bore a series of numbers and letters that made Jada's jaw tighten. She recognized the formatting used by veterans' nonprofits for sensitive financial data. "What is it?" Lena asked, focusing on the drive. "Evidence?" Jada held it up to the light. "This connects to county contracts, grant money, the kind of paperwork that shows where millions in public safety funding really goes." Lena's eyes widened. She lowered her camera and pulled out her laptop, fingers flying across the keys. "Look at this. I've been tracking Sheriff Van's budget reports. Years ago, his department's funding tripled. Same time period. Civilian complaints dropped to 0. Not decline. Vanished completely." "They weren't just hunting random trucks," Jada said. "They knew exactly what load to target." She pulled out a burner phone, one of several she had stashed in her rig for emergencies. The number she dialed belonged to a lawyer counties over, someone who had helped veterans navigate system abuse before. "Morgan and Associates," a cautious voice answered. "I need to discuss a Pine Hollow situation," Jada said, using their agreed-upon phrasing. "Interesting timing," the lawyer replied. "State investigator just opened a preliminary look into that jurisdiction. Might want to connect with them." Jada's spine tingled with warning. How preliminary? Very recent, within the last hours. Too convenient, right after her stop. Right after she had started asking questions. Jada ended the call, mind racing through implications. The morning news flickered across Lena's laptop screen. Deputy Kyle Pike's face filled the frame, his wrist wrapped in pristine white bandages. The caption read, "Local deputy attacked during routine stop. I feared for my life," Pike told the reporter, his voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. "This violent trucker just exploded, no provocation. We were only doing our jobs, protecting the community." Comments poured in beneath the video. Dozens of nearly identical messages condemning dangerous truckers and praising our brave officers. The coordinated nature was obvious to anyone paying attention. "They're not showing your face," Lena noted. "But look, they made sure to get clear shots of your rig's details. Make, model, distinctive markings. Making you harder to hide," Jada said. "Clever." She watched Lena assemble the podcast teaser. Quick cuts of audio from the roadside stop. Carefully distorted voices. Stark text overlays explaining the pattern of abuse. The whole piece ran just under minutes. "Ready?" Lena's finger hovered over the upload button. Jada nodded. "Do it." The teaser went live. For minutes, nothing happened. Then Lena's screen exploded with notifications. Her account had been flagged for community guidelines violations. Copyright claims appeared against audio she hadn't even used. A flood of automated reports targeted her channel. "They were waiting," Lena muttered, trying to counter the digital assault. "They knew exactly." Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number contained only an address, her studio's location, followed by a single question mark. Seconds later, the same address appeared in multiple local Facebook groups accompanied by thinly veiled threats about investigating anti-police propaganda. "They work fast," Jada observed, her voice cold with recognition. She had seen this pattern before, the swift, coordinated effort to silence and intimidate. But this time, it wasn't coming from shadowy government agencies. It was coming from a small-town sheriff's department that had practiced these tactics until they were perfect. Lena's hands shook slightly as she backed up her files to secure servers. "What's our next move?" "We expected this," Jada reminded her. "Let them think their pressure is working. Meanwhile, we follow the money. That drive isn't just about missing cargo, it's about missing millions. And someone in Pine Hollow is getting very, very nervous." The sun streamed through the dusty blinds of Lena's studio apartment, casting thin stripes across her cluttered desk. Two monitors displayed video editing software, carefully blurring faces and distorting voices from Jada's dashcam footage. The small space smelled of coffee and determination. "There," Lena said, making a final adjustment. "Deputies' faces are obscured, but their actions are crystal clear. Audio is clean enough to understand, but processed enough to protect sources." Jada leaned forward, watching the footage play back. The roadside encounter looked almost surreal in daylight. The deputies' aggressive posturing, their calculated cruelty. The moment everything changed. "Good work on the audio. You can hear the threat in their voices without identifying them. Ready?" Lena's finger hovered over the publish button. Jada nodded. "Do it." The episode went live. For minutes, silence. Then Lena's phone erupted with notifications. Call after call poured in, each person speaking their own piece of the larger puzzle. "I'm a waitress at the truck stop," one woman said, her voice trembling. "I've seen them plant things in people's vehicles during routine searches. They make sure we all watch." A man identifying himself as a former dispatcher spoke in hushed tones. "They trained us which calls to drop. Said it was about resource management, but it was always specific callers, specific situations. Always they took everything." A driver reported, "They said my paperwork was suspicious, never saw my cargo again. Department claimed no record of the stop." Jada documented each call meticulously, noting patterns, cross-referencing details. Outside the studio window, she watched people on the street pause at Sheriff Van's campaign banners. The bold words, safety, family, faith, seemed to take on new meaning as passers-by studied them with fresh eyes. "Look at this," Lena said, pointing to her screen. An email had arrived from Judge Whitaker's clerk, marked urgent. "The judge will hold an emergency hearing if we submit evidence through proper channels." "Forward that to the attorney," Jada said, pulling out her burner phone. She dialed the lawyer's number, putting it on speaker as Lena recorded. "I'm ready to sign an affidavit," Jada stated once the connection was secure. Full statement, all details properly witnessed. "About time," the lawyer replied. "I've got a state investigator trying to reach you. Name's Grant Huxley. He's leading a task force on jurisdictional abuse patterns." As if on cue, Lena's office line rang. The caller ID displayed a state government prefix. "This is Grant Huxley," a measured voice announced when Lena answered. "I need to speak with Jada Reeves regarding the Pine Hollow incident." Jada gestured for Lena to put it on speaker. "I'm here, Mr. Huxley." "Ms. Reeves." His tone was professional but warm. "We've been monitoring similar complaints across counties. Your evidence could tie several cases together. We can offer protective custody and a secure channel for evidence submission." He referenced specific case numbers, dates, operational details that matched Jada's research. Everything he said aligned with what they had uncovered. "How do we proceed?" Jada asked, keeping her voice neutral despite the hope trying to take root in her chest. "I'm at the county administrative annex," Huxley replied. "Secure office, clean chain of custody, everything by the book. We can meet at sunset, process your statement, and place you in protective custody before full dark." Jada muted the phone, turning to Lena. "Thoughts?" "Sounds legitimate," Lena whispered. "But I'm following you with cameras rolling. No chances." Jada unmuted. "Agreed, Mr. Huxley. Sunset at the annex. I'll bring the evidence and a witness." "Perfect." The satisfaction in his voice seemed genuine. "Park in the west lot. I'll have officers securing the perimeter." After the call ended, Jada and Lena spent the next hours preparing. They backed up files to multiple secure locations, arranged dead man drops with the attorney, and mapped multiple exit routes from the annex. Legal process might actually work this time, Lena said, packing her camera gear. Maybe. Jada checked her phone. Dozens more messages had arrived, each person sharing their own encounter with Pine Hollow's justice system. But we do this exactly right. Everything documented, everything witnessed. The sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Jada retrieved her sealed evidence files from a secure location, while Lena tested her recording equipment one final time. "Ready?" Lena asked, shouldering her camera bag. Jada took a deep breath, feeling the familiar pre-mission focus settle over her. "Let's go make it count." They drove separately toward the county administrative annex, Jada in her rig, Lena following at a discreet distance. The massive brick building stood silhouetted against the dying sun, its windows reflecting golden light. Several unmarked vehicles were already parked in the west lot, their official plates visible in the fading daylight. The county administrative annex cast long shadows across the parking lot as Jada pulled in, her rig's headlights sweeping across rows of empty spaces. Sodium lamps buzzed overhead, their orange glow flickering like dying fireflies. Grant Huxley stood beside a dark sedan, his posture relaxed and professional. His suit jacket caught the uneven light as he raised a hand in greeting. Jada performed her standard security scan before stepping down from the cab. Exits, cameras, sightlines. 3 unmarked vehicles were positioned at strategic points around the lot. Their placement felt deliberate, almost tactical. Lena parked her car at a careful distance, camera already recording. She gave Jada a subtle nod as she adjusted her lens. "Ms. Reeves." Huxley's smile was practiced and warm as he extended his hand. "Thank you for trusting the process. We'll handle this by the book." His handshake was firm but not aggressive. His eyes stayed locked on hers, radiating calm authority. Everything about him suggested competence and control. "Let's start with the evidence documentation," he said, gesturing toward the building's side entrance. "Standard procedure requires us to—" 2 state troopers emerged from the shadows, moving with synchronized purpose. Their boots scraped against the asphalt as they flanked the truck. "We'll need to secure the vehicle first," one announced, already reaching for the door handle. "Safety protocols." "I haven't consented to any search," Jada said, her voice clear and steady. "Do you have a warrant?" The troopers exchanged glances, then continued as if she hadn't spoken. One climbed into the cab while the other maintained position, hand resting casually on his weapon. "This is standard protective custody procedure," Huxley explained, his tone reasonable but firmer now. "We need to ensure there are no threats or contraband before processing your evidence." Lena stepped closer, phone raised. "I'm recording this interaction for documentation purposes." A third trooper materialized beside her, blocking her shot with his body. "Ma'am, I need you to step back to a safe distance." "I'm press," Lena protested. "I have the right to—" "Back up," the trooper repeated, advancing until Lena was forced to retreat or make contact. "This is an active investigation scene." The first trooper's voice cut through the tension. "Got something here." He emerged from the cab holding a small plastic bag between gloved fingers. The contents caught the sickly orange light. "Appears to be narcotics, located under the driver's seat." Jada's face remained composed, but her eyes hardened. "That's not mine. I did not consent to this search, and I maintain that it's unlawful." "Face the vehicle, please," the second trooper ordered, producing handcuffs. "Hands behind your back." I want on record that this is a planted substance, Jada stated clearly, knowing Lena's camera was still rolling from its new position. This is a coordinated setup using unlawful search procedures. The cuffs snapped shut with unnecessary force. The troopers turned her toward the waiting cruiser, making sure she was fully visible to any watching eyes. Their grip on her arms was intentionally tight. Not enough to leave marks, but enough to assert dominance. "We'll log your complaint," Huxley said smoothly, reaching for the evidence files Jada had brought. "I'll make sure these are properly processed." The thumb drive disappeared into his pocket with practiced efficiency. Through it all, Jada kept her breathing steady. She noted faces, name tags, unit numbers, building her mental map of the operation. The troopers' movements were too clean, too rehearsed. This wasn't standard procedure, it was choreography. "You have the right to remain silent," one trooper began reciting as he guided her into the back seat. The words felt hollow, a ritual stripped of meaning. Lena's voice carried across the lot. "This is being documented. We have multiple recordings of—" "Clear the scene," a trooper ordered, stepping toward her, "or we'll cite you for interference." The cruiser door slammed shut with finality. Through the window, Jada watched Huxley speak quietly into his phone. Her evidence files tucked securely under his arm. His calm smile never wavered. They drove her through empty streets, past closed shops and dark houses. The county jail rose up like a concrete monument to small-town power, its few lit windows glowing like predatory eyes. The booking process was efficient and impersonal. Forms were filled, fingerprints taken, possessions logged. Each step felt predetermined, as if following a script written long before she arrived. Steel doors clanged shut behind her as they led her to a cell. The sound echoed through the corridor like a judge's gavel, marking the end of one phase and the beginning of another. Through the narrow cell window, Jada caught movement in the hallway. Sheriff Hollis Van's distinctive silhouette appeared, backlit by fluorescent lights. He stood with the easy confidence of a man in his own domain, hands clasped behind his back, watching. The building wasn't just his jurisdiction, it was his theater. And every arrest was a performance designed to reinforce his control. The holding cell smelled of industrial cleaner and stale air. Jada sat motionless on the thin mattress, her back straight against the concrete wall. Her breathing remained measured and controlled as she absorbed every detail of her surroundings. The hollow echoes of footsteps, the mechanical whir of cameras, the precise timing of guard rotations. Through the narrow window in her cell door, she could see Lena pacing in the lobby, gesturing emphatically as deputies blocked her path. Their shoulders formed an impassable wall of beige uniforms. "Ma'am, visiting hours are over," one deputy repeated for the third time, his voice carrying down the corridor. "I'm her legal representative's designated investigator," Lena insisted, holding up her credentials. "I have the right to—" "Not without the sheriff's approval," another deputy cut in. "That's county policy." The mention of the sheriff summoned him like an invocation. Hollis Van appeared in the doorway, his presence filling the space with practiced authority. He wore a crisp uniform and a smile that could charm voters or terrify prisoners depending on his needs. "Ms. Hart," he said warmly, "why don't you head home, get some rest? These things have a way of working themselves out." Lena stood her ground. "I'm documenting everything, Sheriff. Every denial of access, every violation of procedure." "Of course you are." Van's smile didn't waver. He turned to the deputies. "Please escort Ms. Hart to her vehicle for her safety." Jada watched through the window as they herded Lena toward the exit, their politeness carrying clear threat. When the lobby cleared, Van's footsteps approached her cell with unhurried confidence. He appeared in her doorway, filling it like he owned the frame. "Ms. Reeves, I hope you're being treated well." Jada met his gaze but didn't respond. Her stillness seemed to amuse him. "I've reviewed your situation," he continued, voice dripping with false concern. "It's unfortunate. Narcotics charges carry heavy penalties in this county, but there might be a simpler solution." He paused, waiting for her to ask. She didn't. "A felony plea," he offered finally. "Time served. You leave the county tonight and never return. Your truck gets released. Your cargo continues unmolested and everyone sleeps better." "No," Jada said simply. Van's smile tightened at the edges. He made a small gesture to the guard station. The overhead lights flickered and died, plunging the corridor into darkness, broken only by emergency strips. The security camera's red recording lights winked out in perfect synchronization. Heavy footsteps approached. A guard Jada hadn't seen before. He unlocked her cell with practiced efficiency. 3 minutes, Van said quietly, stepping back. The guard moved fast, grabbing Jada's arm and slamming her against the wall. His forearm pressed against her shoulders, careful to avoid leaving marks. "You think you're special," he hissed, breath hot against her ear. "You think your fancy lawyer and your little reporter friend make you untouchable? Women like you never learn." Jada didn't struggle. She counted seconds in her head, noting every detail, the guard's stance, his breathing pattern, the exact pressure points he chose. This wasn't improvised. It was rehearsed intimidation designed to break spirits without leaving evidence. The lights hummed back to life precisely minutes later. The guard stepped away as smoothly as he had arrived, straightening his uniform. Van reappeared in the doorway. "Think about my offer," he said pleasantly. "Things tend to get uncomfortable for people who refuse my hospitality." As if to emphasize his point, Jada's cell phone lit up with messages the moment they returned her personal items for logging. "Lena, urgent. They're raiding the studio. Armed deputies, no warrant. Claiming evidence tampering investigation. Hard drives being seized. Preach's shop padlocked. They arrested Russ for interfering with an investigation. Need help." Her attorney. Court calendar suddenly shifted. Judge Whitaker unavailable indefinitely. Working on options. And most concerning, an automated alert from her dead man drop server. Someone had accessed it, trying to scrub the uploads. The footage was compromised. Jada sat back on the mattress, her face betraying nothing as she processed the coordinated assault on her support system. They were isolating her, cutting off every avenue of resistance, but in doing so, they had revealed something crucial. She recalled each visit from Van over the past hours. Every time he appeared, the same sequence played out. Lights down, cameras off. Minutes of darkness, not 2 minutes, not 4, exactly 3. A pattern born of arrogance and routine, as predictable as sunrise. The guard passed her cell again, smirking. Jada remained still, her breathing steady. She wasn't counting the hours until morning. She was counting the minutes between camera cycles, mapping the rhythms of a system that thought itself invincible. Through her window, she could see the wall-mounted clock ticking away seconds, under the harsh fluorescent lights. She watched its hands move with the same patience she had once used to study patrol patterns in far more dangerous places. Every prison had its schedule. Every schedule had its gaps. The lights flickered again as Van made another pass through the corridor, his boots clicking against the floor in measured steps. Right on cue, the cameras went dark. Minutes of clockwork darkness. Minutes of absolute authority. Minutes of perfect, predictable darkness. The holding cell's light filtered through a narrow window, casting sharp shadows across the concrete floor. Jada sat upright on her bunk, one hand pressed deliberately against her side. When the breakfast guard passed, she caught his attention with a controlled wave. "I need medical attention," she said, her voice steady and professional. "I'm experiencing chest tightness and numbness in my left arm." The guard paused, frowning. "You seemed fine last night." "I'm documenting symptoms as they develop," Jada replied, using the precise language she knew would trigger protocols, "and requesting this be logged for liability purposes." He studied her for a moment, then reached for his radio. Jada had been mapping these small details all night. Which guards favored which positions, how many seconds between security buzzes, the exact pattern of camera sweeps. Within minutes, a nurse arrived with a clipboard and an expression of professional skepticism. Jada described her symptoms with medical terminology that made the nurse look up sharply. "Previous cardiac history?" the nurse asked, wrapping a blood pressure cuff around Jada's arm. "Everything's in my medical file," Jada said. "I need this complaint logged, please, with timestamps." The nurse's pen scratched across official forms, creating the paper trail Jada needed. As she worked, Jada tracked the morning shift change through her peripheral vision. 3 new guards, 2 familiar faces from night shift lingering to chat. The camera in the corridor clicked as it panned. Somewhere across town, Lena was hunched over a borrowed laptop in the basement of Preach's cousin's house. She had started a live update stream hours ago, careful never to mention locations, just times, events, witness counts. The nurse finished her assessment and stepped out to make a call. Through the cell door's window, Jada watched her speak quietly into a phone at the guard station. A new shift supervisor appeared, checked paperwork, made his own call, procedures clicking into place like tumblers in a lock. 3 cells down, a trustee mopped the floor with slow, methodical strokes. Jada had noticed him the previous night. The way he worked during guard changes, how he kept his head down but his eyes alert. His sleeve bore the faded mark of a military tattoo, mostly removed but still readable to those who knew the design. The lights flickered right on schedule. Van's morning inspection approaching. Jada pulled a carefully folded paper from where she had hidden it under her mattress. She had torn it from her initial booking forms, written on it using a broken pencil lead she had palmed during processing. The message was simple. Map coordinates followed by a code phrase used in veteran emergency protocols, one that would trigger her rig's hidden GPS beacon. She had designed that system for exactly this type of situation, when normal channels were compromised. As the cameras went dark, Jada made her move. The trustee's mop brought him past her cell just as the guard stepped away from his post. Minutes of clockwork darkness. She slipped the paper through the gap beneath her door with practiced precision. The trustee's foot slid the note away without breaking stride. By the time the lights hummed back on, there was no evidence of the exchange. The note would make its way to a transport officer, another veteran, within the hour. Judge Whitaker's burner phone message reached Lena. Saw the episode. Files look solid, but he has leverage. Personal things, family things. I can't move openly. Lena relayed this through encrypted channels to Jada's attorney. The judge's fear confirmed what Jada had suspected. Van's power came from knowing where to push, how to threaten without threatening. But his leverage only worked in shadows. The nurse returned with transfer papers. "We're moving you to County General for observation," she announced, marking more checkboxes on her forms. Protocol for cardiac symptoms. 2 guards arrived to escort Jada. They cuffed her with practiced efficiency, but she noticed their uncertainty. This wasn't a normal prisoner transfer. It hadn't come through their usual channels. The transport van waited in the sally port, its engine idling in the gray dawn light. As they led her through the corridors, Jada counted cameras, noted blind spots, mapped each security checkpoint. She kept her breathing steady, her steps measured. To anyone watching, she was just another prisoner being moved through the system. But she knew her GPS beacon was now active, broadcasting its location to a network of veterans who understood its significance. Lena's live stream would track the transport timeline. The nurse's paperwork created an official record. Judge Whitaker's message proved the corruption went higher than street level. Each small piece, the medical complaint, the timestamp stream, the GPS signal, formed part of a larger strategy. Jada hadn't spent the night panicking. She had spent it building a net of visibility that would make her disappearance impossible. The transport van's rear doors swung open. Light flooded in as Jada stepped up into the vehicle, her cuffs clinking quietly against the metal seat. The doors slammed shut with a heavy finality. The transport van swayed along county back roads, its suspension creaking over each pothole. Sunlight flickered through the metal mesh windows, casting shifting patterns across Jada's face. She kept her shoulders loose, head tilted back as if dozing. But her eyes tracked every reflection in the van's interior mirrors. 2 guards sat in the front, separated by a barrier. The younger one kept checking his rear-view mirror, fingers drumming nervously on the steering wheel. The senior officer, Martinez, maintained a stoic silence, but his posture betrayed tension. Shoulders too straight, hand too close to his radio. Jada had counted 3 turns since leaving the jail, each one taking them further from the direct route to County General. Standard procedure required staying on main roads for medical transfers. These weren't main roads. The van slowed for a railroad crossing. Protocol required a complete stop, visual check both ways. As the brakes squealed, Jada shifted her weight carefully, pressing one knee against the metal bench. "Check the crossing," Martinez instructed his partner. The younger guard stepped out, boots crunching on gravel. Jada rolled her shoulders, pressed her tongue against a false crown on her back molar. Veteran fieldcraft, a hidden tool disguised as dental work. The metal pick inside was smaller than a paperclip, but precisely sized for certain locks and electronic triggers. A train horn blared in the distance. The guard outside shouted something about tracks being clear. That's when Jada executed her move. A precise series of actions rehearsed in her mind all night. She jerked forward suddenly, making a choked sound. Her handcuffs rattled against the bench as she doubled over, gasping with theatrical precision. "Can't breathe." "Can't." Martinez turned sharply. "Hey, what's wrong with her?" The younger guard scrambled back into the van. "Should we call it in?" "Protocol says we have to." Martinez reached for his radio. "Medical emergency during transport." Jada continued the performance, wheezing just loud enough to mask the soft click of her hidden tool engaging with her rig's remote beacon trigger, a modified key fob she had prepared for exactly this scenario. 3 quick pulses: activate, broadcast, emergency protocol. "Dispatch, we need medical response," Martinez was saying. "Location is..." Static cut through his transmission. The younger guard swore, adjusting frequencies. More static. While they focused on communications, Jada's beacon was already broadcasting. Somewhere in Preach's cousin's basement, Lena's borrowed laptop pinged with the signal. Within seconds, her live stream activated. "Signal detected. If you see this marker, timestamp it, record everything, traffic cams, store security feeds, anything public, build the timeline." The van's radio crackled. A new voice cut through. "Unit 217, redirect to alternate location. Code 4 Alpha." Martinez frowned. "Code 4 Alpha, that's not confirmed." "Unit 217, proceed to Morgan Event Center, security teams standing by." The younger guard shifted uncomfortably. "But the hospital?" "Those are orders," Martinez said, but his tone carried doubt. Jada had stopped gasping, now sitting calmly upright. The sudden change made Martinez eye her suspiciously. "You're awful relaxed for someone who couldn't breathe a minute ago," he said. Jada met his gaze in the rear-view mirror. "Because I've been hunted before," she replied evenly, "and I learned how hunters get sloppy. They forget to check their corners. They miss the obvious signs." The younger guard's radio squawked again. Local channels flooding with chatter. Online viewers were already triangulating the van's position. Every traffic light camera, every store security feed, every cell phone video became a data point in Lena's growing digital map. 3 patrol cars just passed Main Street, one viewer reported. Emergency vehicles redirecting toward Morgan Center. Event permit filed yesterday. Community prayer breakfast with Sheriff Van. The van turned onto a wider road. Through the mesh windows, Jada glimpsed campaign posters stapled to telephone poles. "Sheriff Van, leadership you can trust." Each one perfectly placed for maximum visibility. "Why is everyone heading to a prayer breakfast?" the younger guard muttered. Martinez didn't answer, but his knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. He knew, or suspected, that this transport had become something else, a show, a performance. Jada felt the road surface change from asphalt to concrete. The van slowed, turning into what sounded like a larger lot. Voices filtered through the walls, a crowd gathering. Camera shutters clicked. Someone was testing a microphone. "Unit 217, proceed to rear entrance," dispatch instructed. "Security team will escort prisoner." The van rolled to a stop. Through the windows, Jada saw the Morgan Event Center rising above them, all glass and polished stone. Television vans clustered in one corner, their satellite dishes raised like mechanical flowers. Campaign banners draped the entrance. Safety, family, faith. Somewhere inside, Sheriff Van would be straightening his tie, rehearsing his speech about law and order, about making examples of those who threatened his community's peace. He wanted his victory lap, complete with a handcuffed prisoner as his prop. Martinez opened the van's rear doors. Sunlight flooded in along with the buzz of gathering crowds. Camera flashes sparked like lightning. Reporters jostled for position behind hastily erected barriers. Jada rose slowly, the chain between her ankles clinking against the van's floor. She stepped down into the light, squinting at the sudden brightness, but keeping her spine straight. No stumbling, no hesitation. She faced the cameras with the same calm she had carried through firefights and ambushes. The event center doors stood open, spilling out the sound of gospel music and measured applause. Security teams formed a corridor through the crowd, their earpieces gleaming. Above them all, Van's campaign banner rippled in the morning breeze, its words now reading less like a promise and more like a challenge. Fluorescent lights hummed in the event center's back hallway, casting harsh shadows across the faces of deputies flanking Jada. The air smelled of fresh paint and floor wax, everything polished for the cameras waiting beyond the double doors. Sheriff Hollis Van stood before a mirror mounted on the cream-colored wall, adjusting his silk tie with practiced precision. His reflection showed a man comfortable in expensive clothes, someone who had mastered the art of looking trustworthy. He smoothed non-existent wrinkles from his jacket lapels, then turned to face Jada with a pastor's practiced smile. "Quite a morning for prayer and reflection, wouldn't you say?" His voice carried that same manufactured warmth, though some of us have more to reflect on than others. Deputy Vance, sporting a theatrical wrist bandage, sneered and jerked the cuffs. "Keep moving, troublemaker." Through the walls, they could hear the growing murmur of the crowd. Local media, church groups, politicians, all gathering to witness Van's carefully orchestrated message about law and order in Pine Hollow County. Lena's live stream counter ticked steadily upward. Viewers poured in, sharing screen recordings and clips. Someone posted an old video of Vance at a police fundraiser bragging about cleaning up the county roads. Another viewer matched Pike's badge number to separate missing driver reports, filed in neighboring jurisdictions. "Look at this pattern," one comment read, linking timestamps. Same stretch of road, same deputies, same reports of evidence found during searches. The stream chat erupted with fresh discoveries. Photos of Van's expanding property holdings, screenshots of county budget irregularities, links to complaint forms that mysteriously vanished from official websites. A side door opened, bringing a burst of morning air. Judge Whitaker entered, her face drawn tight as a bowstring. Her clerk trailed behind, clutching a leather portfolio and looking like he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. The judge's eyes swept the hallway, taking in the deputy's posturing, Van's calculated calm, Jada's restraints. Van's smile widened. "Judge Whitaker, so pleased you could join us for this important community moment." Before she could respond, a stagehand appeared. 2 minutes, Sheriff." Van nodded, straightening his already straight tie once more. "Time to remind everyone what real leadership looks like." He gestured to the deputies. "Bring her. Let's show Pine Hollow how we handle threats to public safety." As they moved toward the stage entrance, Jada caught sight of someone in the small crowd of organizers and assistants. A young woman wearing an event staff badge, but her fingers moved across her phone with familiar urgency. One of Lena's helpers, positioned exactly where they had planned. Jada cleared her throat and spoke just loud enough to carry. "Strange weather for August." The phrase was meaningless to everyone else, but it was Lena's confirmation code. The helper's slight nod confirmed. Their encrypted backup was safe, distributed across servers beyond Van's reach. Through the stage curtain, they could hear Van's introduction being read. "A leader who puts faith and family first, who protects our values." A commotion near the service entrance drew everyone's attention. 2 deputies were escorting, half-dragging, a new arrival. Russ Grady stumbled between them, his wrists shackled, his usually pristine mechanic's uniform wrinkled and stained. They had clearly pulled him straight from his cell, not even allowing him to clean up. Judge Whitaker's posture changed. Something in her carefully maintained professional distance cracked at the sight of Grady, a respected business owner, a community elder, being paraded in chains like a medieval spectacle. The message wasn't subtle. This is what happens to anyone who helps the wrong people. "Get him in position," Van ordered quietly. "When I signal, bring them both out. Let everyone see what law enforcement means in Pine Hollow." The judge's hands tightened on her robes. Her clerk touched her arm, whispering something urgent, but she shook her head. The fear that had kept her careful all these years was transforming into something harder and less manageable. Applause thundered as Van stepped through the curtain. His voice boomed through the sound system, practiced and powerful. "My friends, my neighbors, we gather today to reaffirm our commitment to lawfulness and order." The massive screen behind the stage showed his face in high definition. Every gesture calculated for maximum impact. Camera flashes sparkled from the media section. Phones rose throughout the crowd, recording. "In Pine Hollow County," Van continued, "we believe in doing things the right way, the legal way. Just yesterday, our deputies apprehended a dangerous individual who thought our laws didn't apply." Jada stood in the wings, watching Van work the crowd like a revival preacher. Deputies shifted impatiently, eager for their cue to drag out their prisoners. Grady kept his head high despite everything. Dignity intact, even in handcuffs. A small red light began blinking on the main audio board. The technician frowned, tapping his controls. Static crackled briefly through the speakers. Van didn't miss a beat. "We face threats to our way of life, but I promise you." The giant screen flickered once, almost imperceptibly. A second flash. The audio popped like distant thunder. Something was happening to the feed. The giant screen behind Sheriff Van flickered again, his campaign slogan dissolving into grainy nighttime footage. Red and blue lights strobed across a familiar stretch of county road. Deputies Vance and Pike emerged from shadow, their movements sharp and predatory as they approached Jada's truck. "Now, folks," Van said smoothly. "I'm sure there's just some technical—" The deputies' voices cut through his reassurance, crystal clear through the event center's speakers. "Where'd you steal this rig from?" Vance's sneer carried perfectly. "Wrong county to be playing games." Gasps rippled through the crowd as they watched Pike force Jada to her knees in the gravel. Every crude comment, every threatening gesture played out in high definition. Someone in the front row, a prominent church donor, covered her mouth in shock. "This is obviously some kind of edited," Van started, but the footage continued relentlessly. The screen split to show the deputy's trunk inventory. Evidence baggies laid out like merchandise. Spare gloves. The printed surveillance photo of Jada at the way station. Lena's steady narration laid out each piece. Pre-planned targeting. Systematic harassment. Pattern of predatory stops. State representatives in the audience began edging toward the exits. A county commissioner buried his face in his hands. The local news crews swung their cameras from Van to the screen and back, capturing his increasingly strained smile. "These are serious allegations," Van said, gripping the podium. But I assure you, the next file appeared. Spreadsheets, bank records, property deeds. Each document connected seized assets and public safety grants to a web of private accounts. Red lines traced money flowing from traffic stops to shell companies, then to offshore holdings. Names highlighted themselves. Shell company directors matching Van's family members. Property purchases dated to major drug seizures. "This is fake news," Van announced, forcing a laugh. "Complete fabrication by troublemakers who—" Movement at the side doors caught everyone's attention. Men and women in dark suits entered quietly, spreading along the walls. Their badges weren't local. These were state agents, summoned by the mounting public pressure, and Judge Whitaker's hastily signed emergency orders. Van's voice rose, taking on a preacher's righteous tone. "My friends, we're witnessing an attack on law and order itself. These so-called records are nothing. The documentation is complete and verified." Jada's voice cut through his performance. She stepped onto the stage, still in handcuffs, but her presence commanded attention. The deputies flanking her suddenly looked unsure. "Chain of custody is maintained for all recordings," she continued, her tone precise and professional. "Dash cam footage, body cameras, and dispatch logs are preserved with timestamps. The roadside location where Deputies Vance and Pike were left restrained but unharmed is logged at coordinates. The pattern of camera outages during sheriff visits is documented across multiple dates." She wasn't emotional or accusatory. She was methodical. The audience felt the shift. This wasn't an angry accusation, it was a battlefield report. "The medical supplies in my trailer were cover for financial documents meant to expose county contract fraud," Jada stated, "which is why an illegal stop was arranged using my photo from a compromised way station camera." Van grabbed the microphone. "This woman attacked officers. She's a criminal trying to—" "The deputies were recorded admitting they were told I'd be alone," Jada continued calmly. "Their trunk contained prepackaged evidence. Dispatch logs show a coordinated non-response. Judge Whitaker has signed an order confirming probable cause for a full investigation." The state agents moved forward, their paths converging on the stage. Donors in the front rows physically recoiled from Van, creating distance between themselves and what was coming. "This is a mistake," Van announced, but his voice had lost its polish. "I've served this county faithfully for—" "Sheriff Hollis Van," one of the agents cut in, reaching for handcuffs. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, corruption under color of authority, and multiple counts of civil rights violations." The crowd watched in stunned silence as the cuffs clicked around Van's wrists. His campaign banner still hung above the stage. Safety, family, faith, now reading like an indictment. Cameras flashed in rapid succession. Phones recorded from every angle. The giant screen continued cycling through evidence, each new document adding weight to the moment. "This is what happens," Van tried one last time, "when we let outsiders into our—" "No!" Judge Whitaker's voice rang out as she stood. "This is what happens when we finally stop letting fear silence the truth." The agents began reading Van his rights, their voices echoing through the sound system he had arranged for his own glory. His practiced smile cracked completely, revealing the rage and panic beneath. He looked desperately toward his deputies, but they stepped back, already calculating their own survival. The audience that had gathered to witness his power now witnessed his fall instead. Every phone, every camera, every witness, ensuring this moment couldn't be buried or denied. This wasn't just an arrest. It was the dismantling of a system played out under lights Van himself had arranged. Backstage at the event center erupted into controlled chaos. State agents moved with practiced efficiency, reading rights and securing suspects, while local officers stood frozen, unsure which side of the dividing line they'd land on. Deputies Vance and Pike were brought in through separate doors, their expressions shifting from arrogance to panic as they realized the depth of their situation. The handcuffs clicked around their wrists. Proper procedure this time, not their usual rough show of force. You're under arrest for civil rights violations, conspiracy to commit evidence tampering, and abuse of authority under color of law, the lead agent announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. The deputies' faces drained of color as their badges were removed. Across the room, another agent was carefully unlocking Russ Grady's restraints. The older mechanic rubbed his wrists, dignity intact, despite everything they had tried to take from him. His eyes met Jada's, a quiet nod of recognition between warriors who had held their ground. Lena Hart's phone kept streaming, her steady narration capturing every detail. State authorities are now taking multiple deputies into custody. Judge Whitaker is reviewing emergency dismissals for unlawfully detained citizens. The task force appears to be seizing county records. Judge Whitaker sat at a folding table that had been set up hastily, her back straight as steel as she signed official dismissals. Her hand moved with decisive strokes. No hesitation left in her movements. Case dismissed with prejudice, she announced, stamping Jada's paperwork, due to documented misconduct and unlawful search. She did the same for Grady's file, then began reviewing other cases marked for priority examination. The event center's main hall had transformed into something between a courthouse and a public confession. Townspeople who had arrived expecting a sheriff's victory speech now stood in clusters, watching officers they had feared for years being processed one by one. The badges that had seemed untouchable suddenly looked different, smaller, vulnerable to consequence. Lena's laptop chimed with donation notifications. Her listeners had mobilized, raising emergency funds in real time. For Russ Grady's shop repairs, she announced. For legal defense funds, to protect witnesses who come forward, the community is responding. State investigators moved through the space with purpose, serving warrants and securing evidence. All county records are being seized immediately, the lead agent declared. Missing persons cases from the corridor are being reopened. We're establishing a dedicated task force to review every traffic stop, every seizure, every complaint that was buried. Someone thrust a microphone toward Jada, asking for a statement. She shook her head, declining the spotlight. Instead, she spoke directly to the investigators. What matters is concrete change. I want body camera audits, preservation of dispatch logs, and independent oversight of traffic stops. This isn't about speeches. It's about making sure no one else gets hunted on these roads. The morning light began seeping through the high windows, painting everything in clean, clear tones. Evidence technicians photographed documents. Witnesses gave preliminary statements. The machinery of real justice had engaged, grinding slowly but thoroughly. Russ Grady stood near the exit, watching it all with quiet satisfaction. A small group of community members approached him, offering help to rebuild his shop. The terror that had kept everyone isolated was breaking apart in the light. Jada walked through the parking lot, her boots crunching on gravel still wet with dew. Her rig sat where she had left it, now surrounded by evidence tape and protective barriers. She approached slowly, taking in every detail. The familiar curves of the cab, the sealed trailer that had carried more than charity goods, the windshield that had witnessed everything. The driver's door opened with its usual creak. Jada placed her hand on the steering wheel, feeling the worn grip spots that had become home. This wasn't just a truck anymore. It was proof that running and hiding weren't the only options. Sometimes standing your ground could change the ground itself. Lena appeared beside the cab, still recording, but with her phone lowered. "What happens now?" she asked. "With you, they'll probably want you to testify." "First, I drive," Jada said, simply. "These roads don't belong to them anymore. They need to see trucks rolling through, carrying witnesses instead of targets." She settled into the seat with the comfort of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. "I'll keep moving until the road stops being a hunting ground." The engine rumbled to life, a sound of purpose rather than escape. Morning sunlight caught the trailer's sides, making the charity logo gleam. Other trucks were pulling into the lot now. Word had spread through driver networks, and they had come to see justice with their own eyes. Jada released the brake and eased forward, her rig moving with deliberate confidence. She wasn't running from Pine Hollow County. She was leading the way through it, showing others it could be done. The road ahead stretched clean and clear, belonging to everyone again. Behind her, the event center continued its transformation into a place of reckoning. But ahead, through the windshield, lay miles of asphalt that would carry different stories now. Stories of standing ground, of justice served, of roads reclaimed from those who had tried to own them. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.